Blended Lives is a program that the former director of Goodwood Museum and Gardens, Larry Paarlberg, and myself came together to talk about 12 years ago, that we would be ideal properties to engage students early in life into our shared history, the shared history of this community.
Well, this year you're going to journey with Miss Jamie back to Reconstruction. And I'm Miss Jamie.
Current Superintendent Larry Paarlberg very much embraced the program and encouraged us to continue it, and that has been a very cooperative partnership with the Lynn County School District, Riley House, and Goodwood. Okay, on our stages, we have Miss Jamie Thomas, who came up from Sanford, Florida. She is a member of the Riley Museums Network.
100 more years before I was set out with a group of people to fight for those same rights that had been promised us so many years before.
Well, I am here to do presentations for 3rd and 4th graders on the Reconstruction era. And it's my desire to make it as simple as possible for them to understand, in their language, on their level. I usually like to incorporate the actual historic facts with some type of song or some type of movement that they can attach it to.
He even started the first school for little colored children. And do you know that because he taught little colored children how to read and write, they killed my boy?
The story that I share with them is the story of Miss Jane Pittman. We all know that's a fictional character that Cicely Tyson has portrayed on the television movie, the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. Although she's fictional, the character does experience a lot of the devastation that happened from the Civil War time up to the civil rights.
Well, back in 1965, when folks was marching for their freedom, I was right there with them during the civil rights, marching for the same rights that had been promised to us during the Reconstruction era, the rights that never became ours.
And then Mr. Sam on the other stage is one of our regular local storytellers, African drumming performers.
Today I'm exposing the children to West African drums, the kinkini, the sangba, the dunumba, and the djembe. There's more drums, but this is all that we have out here right now. We're relating it to slavery and what we call it, the oppression that was in this country at one point, just to let them know that there was another, music genre that we don't hear about really in the school systems that was happening during this time, along with the hand claps and the spirituals that were sung. They used to hide their drums also and pull them out. They used to look like tables. They had tablecloths over them and look like barrels, pickle barrels or anything like that. And then when master wasn't looking, they'd rip off the tablecloth off the top of it and they start playing away and then hide them back so that they could still keep their music, because in Africa and many other societies and ethnic groups in the world, music is an intricate part of everyday life. Everything is a rhythm. That's what people believe. Everything is a rhythm. The kinkini is the sheriff of every rhythm. When these two start arguing, this one will come in and just start keeping time. The stories represent, it'd be teachings. It's teachings how a parent would teach a child. It's about morals, it's a fun way just to interact with children. They don't want to just be lectured to, but if you put in the story what they can in context, they will respond better to it. So there's one story, Nancy taking up common sense. It's just a funny story to let you know that you need to think about things before you do it. And Nancy took everyone's common sense and tried to climb up a tree with a calabash, it's a big gourd, and put it in there and tried to climb up a tree and had it strapped to his belly and try to climb up a tree. That doesn't make sense. And then someone came along and said, if you put it on your back and climb up the tree, then you'll be able to get up the tree faster. And he got mad. It's telling you, think things through before you take action. Doom doom ba. Doom doom ba. One more time. Doom doom ba. These drums like to have conversations with each other, but sometimes the doom doom ba and the sangba like to get into an argument.
This is an event that's been ongoing for fourth graders. All our fourth graders get a chance to come to the Althemese Museum and hear history about African Americans from Reconstruction to present. This is an annual event that we do here under the leadership of the executive director, Ms. Althemese Barnes, at the Round. We've been doing this for a number of years since I've been on the school board, and I've been excited about it because what we do here at the Althemese Museum, also we do it at Goodwood. So it's called Blended Lives, bringing these races together and the cultures together to understand more about African Americans.
Come in, and welcome to my home. I was just catching up on my passion, reading. You know, there was a time when a man like me was not allowed to read. You see, I was born into slavery on September 24th, 1857, right here in Tallahassee. Though President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation in January 1863, we did not get our full freedom until May 20th, 1865. That was the date when General McCook was sent to Florida to read the proclamation for the benefit of all states that were still holding slaves. Florida was one of those states. Reading is very important to me. You see, after my family was released from slavery, I decided I would read every book I could find and become a teacher. I wanted to teach as many people as I could how to read and write. My mother, Sarah, used to say, "John, you will face good times and bad times. You will get things and lose things. And folks may try to take things away from you, but they can't ever take away what you have in your head." In 1893, I became principal of the high school for Negro students, Lincoln Academy. One of my most important involvements, next to my job as principal and my church work at St. James CME, is working with Booker T. Washington and the Negro Business League throughout Florida to advocate racial uplift through economics and education and promote racial harmony. This keeps me quite busy.
So the students right now are participating in this Blended Lives event, which is absolutely amazing. Students get to come and visit the Riley House Museum as well as Goodwood Museum and basically have a field trip that becomes alive. It's living history. It really is. They get to come over here, touch things, hear about things, see performances, and really learn about the era. That's a really, really important part of history, Tallahassee history.
We're trying to introduce them or reintroduce them to the Reconstruction period, which is among the most difficult and challenging and fascinating periods of history in Tallahassee as much as any place, because overnight you had the end of a war in which this society was deeply engaged, and the freeing of slaves, which turned the society upside down. From a quarter to a fifth of the adult white men had been killed or injured in the war, and so the educated class had been devastated, and the slaves, newly freed, the last thing that they wanted to do was remain on their plantations in their past roles, and so they sought to find a new direction, either to physically leave Tallahassee or to become a planter themselves. But the economy was destitute. They had nothing of their own virtually. They had been used to plant and harvest cotton. There was no market for cotton. The planters were no longer their owners or their employers, and so everything was up in the air. So it's really one of the most complex times. And so we're trying to introduce the word Reconstruction to get the children to try to appreciate that something had been damaged, had been fallen apart, was broken, and needed to be so-called reconstructed, and that was an active effort on the part of both Southerners and Northerners, and of the federal government, of the state government, and that there were then waves of reform and retrenchment and progress ahead and then falling back over the next 10 or 15 years, and then it took another 100 years for civil rights to be fully embraced and enjoyed. So introducing the concept and the period of Reconstruction, and how fortunate we are in Tallahassee to have so many historical resources around that are so useful in educating ourselves about Reconstruction.
Goodwood is a plantation that was begun in the early 1840s, late 1830s. A plantation is another word for a large farm. They grew cotton, they grew corn and sweet potatoes, but cotton was the big cash crop. That's how they supported themselves. A large plantation like this, Goodwood, showed the wealth of the people that owned it. Goodwood was kind of the aristocracy, the people of the South, the aristocracy, the blue bloods would live in a home like this. But remember that 3/4 of the white people did not live like this. This is just an example of what wealth could do.
You know, as a teacher, it's really important that this is not just learned about in the books, that this is something that they see, they breathe it, they live it, and they can go back and take this experience with them. It's definitely an experience of a lifetime, something that they will remember. And as they get older and older and eventually become, for example, 11th graders, they'll be back and they'll be participating in forums like we have going on tonight here.
One of the things that we've done was we made memorial to John G. Riley. We went on the internet and looked at Martin Luther King memorial that they just opened in Washington, D.C., and we wanted them to have exposure to that and to find ways that they could show how somebody who was important, who had a great impact on the community, that we could do those things too.
You can walk through the house and feel yourself transported to 1840, 1850. You can see a house that appeared as it was on the eve of the Civil War. And then you can see in the outbuildings how slaves lived. You can essentially see how slave cabins existed and how people lived. It absolutely transports you back to that era and is a wonderful educational resource. There's really no story or book you can read that has that immediate impact of transporting one back to that time.
This year we're doing Reconstruction, so we're focusing on how hard times were after the war. The land had not been planted because there was no men to be here to plant it. They didn't have cash. They were land rich but cash poor. It was just hard. The blacks and the whites did not know what to do with each other. The blacks wanted to leave, and who could blame them, because now they could, but they were not educated, and so they could not find jobs really in any other skill than what they had learned on the plantation. A lot of them went back to their original plantations to work, but it was hard for them because they did not think that they should have to work after the war, and they were uneducated. So the people from the north, the carpetbaggers, came down and they were trying to help kind of equalize and normalize. They were trying to educate the blacks. The whites were going to have to scramble for themselves. It was very, very hard, but people persevered.
Leon County Schools has formed this amazing partnership with the Blended Lives event, which is the people from Goodwood Museum and Riley House Museum. And we do this annually, where we get together and we have these students come and visit these two venues. And it's really, really important that we teach all types of history, especially something as important as African American history, not just once a month, but annually. And this is what this is kind of promoting. You know, the students have come and the teachers have prepared for this. They've done an amazing lesson plan. That's a week-long lesson plan. It's preparing them for this event, so they really understand the 1800s and the Reconstruction era.
We know that Union troops encamped not far from here, the same place where slaves had previously lived. You can look out on the fields and imagine what it was like to have those cultivated by slaves, and then all of a sudden that economy evaporated and the slaves' lives were wonderfully transformed, that they were freed, but also it was absolutely chaotic. It was very uncertain where to go and how to proceed. The one thing that remains is the plantation house and the white plantation families, and they also had to figure out how to live anew. They, at Goodwood, they had approximately 240 slaves on the eve of the Civil War, and then none 5 years later. And so their lives were transformed. The economy of this place was transformed. And you can get a feel for that as you walk around this plantation.